Hey, this is Dr. Banzai. Today we're taking a look at this Andycine R1 pocketable RGB light. Andycine sent me this to check out, make a video on, so keep that in mind throughout the video itself. Let's get started. Got the Andycine light on here. Let's turn it on. Yeah, it does actually do something. You can go over a few of the specs that are important about the light. It is a compact light with a full metal casing on it, aluminum. There's a battery inside rated 3600 milliamp hours, bicolor range of 2500 Kelvin to 7000 Kelvin. It does have the full RGB mode from 0 to 360. Here's one decent use case for a light like this. You have a little action camera, something like that, that you can attach a cold shoe. Pretty simple to set up. Of course, you just got the included adapter with the light itself. So in this case, flip it on. It is very bright. I have it set to 5200 Kelvin color temperature. So here is 10% on that light. Let's go to 100, 50%, and 100%. So you can see that it definitely changes things. Maybe getting just enough extra light on the situation could be nice sometimes. And it's not a huge light. However, it is pretty heavy, so just keep that in mind. So this is a 50% power on this light. Of course, you could do that with a smartphone. I actually have one with me that I can try out. One thing you could do is just something like that. See what it looks like. So that's 50%. Definitely does something. Previously, Andycine sent me the Boling P1 light to check out as well. You can see they're very similar, but the Boling has that special mount bracket thing. Something to take note of on the back of the P1 versus the R1 is that the back panel is a lot thicker on the R1 than the P1. On the P1, you have two different dials instead of a single jog dial. And it does have the jog dial, but also has one for adjusting power by itself. Looking at the LEDs, you can tell that it is a different configuration, definitely a different light. With the Boling P1, you can go to 0 power, so basically the light's off, but it's still on at the same time. And with the R1, it goes to 10% power. Here we have 25% power, 5200 Kelvin color temperature, the Boling P1 on the left and the R1 on the right. Now we're set to 50% power. Here are the two lights at 100% power, 5200 Kelvin color temperature. Here are the two lights in RGB mode. You can see the P1 has hue and saturation, whereas the R1 just has the hue. On the left we have the P1, on the right we have the R1, 0 hue with 75% power. The light is very similar looking. Here are the two lights at 200 hue with 75% power. Two lights set to 150 hue. You can tell they are different looking. It's got more of a green, more of a blue. Here are the two lights set to 300 hue. Of course, 75% power. If you're unsure which light to go for between these two, I'd say that if you want something simple as possible, but still has a good amount of power and battery life, the R1 is a good bet compared to the Boling P1. But if you want a lot of adjustment, the special bracket, the Boling has definitely got more to it. Here's another option, smartphone, light, some type of tripod. Turn this on. Let's see how. Now it's 50% power on the light at the moment. In this case, could easily do it. It is actually nicer with the smartphone because I can see a lot more on the screen. So we're at 100%. Let's see what it looks like. Take it down to 10%. Oh wow, that's quite a difference. Here is something to take note of with the Andycine R1 and adapters. It does not come with an adapter. You want to use one that is around 2 amps, otherwise it will flash while it's charging. So just know that it will do that, and it's a feature, not a problem. I'm going to show you an example here. This one is not 2 amps. Does that flash while it's charging? See that it is actually pulling about 5 watts, which is pretty decent. Don't know why they're putting this flash in there to indicate the low amperage, but it's in there. Just something to take note of. You still can run the light while it's charging, even with a low amp adapter. However, if you use a larger adapter, you shouldn't have any issues. As you can see with the larger adapter, I think this one's rated about 1.7 amps. It's not doing that flashing while it's charging. As you can see with a 2.1 amp charger, we're getting nearly 10 watts of power to the light. I fully charged the battery and then I turned the light on. We're going 100% power. I've been running this for quite a while now. It's pulling around 9.5, 9.6 watts. I don't think with this specific charger it can add to the battery and run the light at the same time, but it appears to be running the light without pulling much battery power. At least the indicator hasn't changed in quite a while. I don't know, 10-20 minutes. It says that it does support USB Type-C power delivery. I don't have any type of adapter that does that. Maybe that would change things a little bit, but it is running, and at the very least having an adapter attached to it should let the light run longer than the 2 hours or so with just the battery on full power. As for connections, the light has a single 1/4-20 thread on there, so a tripod, anything like that. It comes with this little setup here. I have this older ProMaster light. You can see it has an extra hole in there for the included connection. So it's something I think Andycine should consider in the future with their lights, is to have an extra hole and a custom bracket connection. It's really simple to connect. You're not going to want to go all the way with this. Back it off a little bit and then tighten the top piece. And then you got the bottom one to connect whatever you're doing there. But the more interesting thing about this light is using it without this little extra piece. I have this Manfrotto small little tripod. Of course, with this light and the standard connection, you can easily hook these two up together. So if you wanted something super small, you can do something like that. Pretty nice. You can step it up to something a little larger. Same situation. So in that case, taller, still pretty versatile and transportable. There's another bracket. This one's even more intense. Let's go over a test where I use a camera here. We have the 56mm lens, the M5, the R1 set to 2500 Kelvin color temperature, the R1 set to 5200 Kelvin color temperature, the R1 set to 7000 Kelvin color temperature. Here's the R1 set to 0 hue. Here's the R1 set to 100 hue. Here's the R1 set to 200 hue. Here's R1 set to 300 hue. In my previous video on the Boling R1, I did something about doing macro photography with a light like this. Boling has that extra bracket which helped out a little bit, but you could easily get a bracket for this. Do a similar thing. Here is the setup without any type of additional light. Turn this light on. It's 100%. Here is the default lighting mode. You have bicolor and the amount of power. Let's go all the way to the bottom. See that it is jumping from 50 each time. Press the mode button, you can see it switches to RGB. In RGB mode we have the hue and of course the power. So with the hue you can actually cycle through all the way from 360 to 0 and it jumps. The third is in effects mode. Let's go into there. So you have 1 to 7 on that. The light does come with a bag if you're interested in that, so pull strings on there. You will have to take off the cold shoe attachment to fit it in the bag. I see that Andycine R1 Light is a pocketable, relatively versatile light. It's got the one connection for anything you want. 1/4-20 is a simple, easy to use connection. It has the RGB mode, so when you want colors, it's available. Seems pretty strong with the amount of light you can get from it in the RGB and the bicolor mode. And of course it has those effects as well. That was the Andycine R1 Pocketable RGB Light. Again, thanks to Andycine for sending this over to me to make a video on. Interesting light. It's got RV Banzai. Thanks. You have the standard bicolor mode that goes from 2500 Kelvin to 7000. So definitely a good range on that. This wind is not going to work.